Okay, part 9. We're going on now to further complaints about ISS. They're talking about Mr. A's correspondence without prejudice, that I was seeking the vicinity of $600,000. I did write that to him. I was never going to get $600,000. In fact, I wouldn't get a dollar. In fact, I had a chance to go for counterclaim. I never even took it. Now, the reason you have to put a value on things is because you can't go to court without a value. So you can't go to court and say, I just want them to stop. There must be a dollar value attached to your claim. The courts will not listen to your claim if it does not have a value dollar attached to it. So you can't just go in saying, we want him to stop doing this, as ISS did at the end when they were jumping up and down with all these large figures of money that they wanted out of my ass. So you have to put a figure on your bill. So I picked up $600,000 because that's how much the 2 houses and the property I lost fighting this stupid case over nothing in the first place. But everybody loses in court cases. No one's a winner. Even if you get money, you're not a winner. You lose a lot. Inside, in here, outside relationships, everything suffers. So you're going to suffer through this, but we'll get you through it. It's not hard. Well, it is hard, but it's not impossibly hard. So the solicitor's informed, this is coming from ISS, he says, my solicitors informed me that on the 29th of February 2008, that they wrote to Emma Lawyers, letter dated 29th of February 2008, marked without prejudice, but does not contain any proposal of offer for the dispute. Mr. Aggett threatened to obtain and disclose publicly all ISS contracts in Australia. Mr. Aggett did not identify the source of all ISS contracts here in Australia. Save the vague to refer vaguely to conducting contractual searches. He also seeking the ISS to obtain information, letters containing numerous threats, including the cessation of a website titled Man vs ISS World Largest Corporation, we'll get to that in a minute, without prejudice, shown in PV Mark 12, the copy of the letter dated from Emma Lawyers. Okay, now you can see they just double dutched themselves there because, and I'll explain that a bit further down as well, when I said I will publicly disclose the contracts, that was publicly disclosing who ISS had contracts with. Whether it be Suncorp Stadium, BHP, Brisbane Airport, I didn't care. Whoever they had a contract with, I was looking for it. And then I would write to them and inform them about a case, Nardi versus ISS, where he got a payout of 1.2 million, I think, for being called names because he was an Indian chap. And the workers on site would always call him nicknames and run him down a little bit. So he took him to court for victimisation. ISS lost that case. He got awarded 1.2 million. ISS then appealed that case and put it back onto the contractor and made them pay out the compensation to this gentleman because it was their workers that did it. So if you look at that as a whole picture, that means that anybody who employs ISS World in any format or any ability, that you're putting your insurance at risk. Flat out. Because if their employee is harassed or victimised and possibly injured on your work site, that means they will appeal the case and put the money back out of your pocket, which is a big thing when you're paying out $1.2 million. So I can assure you, anybody who has a contract with ISS needs to be aware of Nardi versus ISS. And if you're not aware of it, Google it, look it up and read it. You will see the appeal from ISS putting the case back onto the contractor and removing it from ISS's responsibility. So keeping all that in mind. It is understood that the letter obtaining from existing employees of ISS Security access to documents belonging to ISS Security, and that he is in possession of such documents. Of course, ISS staff are going to give me documents because you treat them like shit. So if you treat your employees like shit, when someone's up there getting the grandstand that I was taking and getting the publicity I was getting, then you can understand why they don't mind giving me documents to assist me in my cause. Now those documents were also then forwarded on to the AFP, at which point I then FOI'd them back, get the Freedom of Information stamp and published them. So that's how you get around any sort of breach of security or breach of process, because they're FOI stamped. Really the source doesn't matter, as long as they've been handed into the relevant authority. Now as long as you choose a government authority relevant to your business, you can hand those documents in, request them back, and they'll be Freedom of Information stamped. You can publish them. There's nothing they can do. For reasons set out earlier in the affidavits, ISS is required to preserve and keep confidential all documents and information of a commercial, sensitive and confidential character. Which is interesting they say that, because along with that statement they provided one of their most confidential documents to the courts as evidence. They supplied a contract with Brisbane Airport. Now, that document clearly states on the front cover it is only for ISS and BACL and is not to be disseminated to any third party. And yet, ISS, who's been so upset about me disseminating stuff, disseminated one of their most confidential documents that they've got on file. You got to wonder where these people got their educations from, because it clearly states on there, ISS but I know why they did it, and I'll tell you why they did it. The reason they offered it was they wanted me to read it. Now, if I had read that document, if I had asked and read that document, then the court would have no option but to apply a gag order to ensure that I never ever spoke about that document. It was a goose trap. They had set out the trap thinking, oh, he's always wanted these contracts, he's going to read it, and then once he reads it, we've got him. Yes, I asked for the contracts, but I didn't want the contracts. I don't care what's in your contract. The contract was irrelevant. It was purely a goat to get a response, to prove I had written a letter that you could later on deny I wrote if you didn't respond. But because you do respond, it gives me the ability to now say, well, you did get the letter because here's your response. You knew I was asking for the contract. However, if they didn't respond, it opens up the avenue of me publishing one of their contracts if I got my hands on it, because I told them that's what I was going to do. So they have to respond. Failing to respond would be an open book. Okay, I can publish it. You didn't. I'm going to write to you again saying, well, I've got a contract now. I'm going to publish it. At which point they would then go, oh shit, what do we do now? Do we acknowledge this letter or don't we? Either way, you hook them, regardless of the fact you don't have a document. Just say you do. There's no proof you do. There's no evidence you do. But you just say it, because it's the hook of getting them to reply so that you can then hang them later on for the reply. The documents information which Mr. Aggett describes in confidential to ISS and clients, ISS is not authorised to disclose such document information to Mr. Aggett or any person acting contrary to the interest of ISS, nor has ISS authorised the use of documents for the purpose identified in Mr. Aggett's letter. So what they're saying is the information I was requiring, they didn't want to release because it's in conflict with what ISS is trying to keep quiet and covered up. Now, in the process of doing that, I was sending these documents to Federal Police, Aviation Authority, ombudsmen, politicians, parliamentarians, everybody. So they don't want people asking questions to them about what they're doing wrong. So that's why they're a bit upset that I'll get the documents. So they refused the documents because it would be in conflict to ISS. It would cause them more problems. Every document I got made more problems. So we keep going and we make more and more and more and more and more problems until their heads are just so full of problems they're trying to fix contracts and save contracts until they starve themselves out of work, because no one's going to employ someone who's so publicly open and who the media is so onto. They're just not going to hire them because there's no low key, and security is all about low key. The use and such disclosure of such documents, as threatened by Mr. Aggett, would be highly detrimental and damaging to ISS security. By statements contained in a letter of 29th of February 2008, it was understood Mr. Aggett to have threatened to interfere with ISS contractual regulations, relations and or trade of ISS security. ISO understood in the letter that the threats causing detriment and damage to ISS security, he intended to achieve the purpose of obtaining compensation which he asserts he is entitled to receive from ISS. Now, consequently, after considering Mr. Aggett's letter, we instructed Emma lawyers that the matters raised in the letter responded to ISS security's rights with respect to these matters raised, and seek Mr. Aggett's undertakings not to carry out any of the actions threatened in the letter that would result in damage to ISS security. Well, of course I'm going to carry out my actions. That's the whole point. The point is to cause damage, create havoc, and cost them the contracts. So to do that, you have to disclose the documents to the relevant authorities. Now, I wasn't just giving the documents to every wee willy-nilly on the planet. They were going to government authorities, and to keep the government authorities active so that they did something about all this, I passed them on to the media. So then the media would ring up the public officials and ask them, what are you doing about this? What's going on here? Why is all this happening? The information they're talking about to their contractors is the information about disclaiming about NADI versus ISS. I was telling every person I could find that their contract, their insurance was under threat due to this NADI versus ISS clause, and that would stand today with any contractor of any ISS part of the world, in Australia anyhow, that this case stands and the contractor picked up the bill for damages to an ISS staff member that is not employed by the contractor. We'll get back to this in part 10.